As a pioneer in the field of legal advertising, Morris Bart has been the subject of numerous newspaper and television feature stories. Additionally, Mr. Bart has written and published several articles on the marketing of legal services and has spoken nationally before various trade groups, including the American Marketing Association, Tulane University Marketing Association, Virginia Trial Lawyers Association, and the Trial Lawyers Marketing Association. He's also been a guest lecturer at Tulane University, right here at the University of New Orleans, as well as Loyola Law School. In 2007, 2008, and 2010, Mr. Bart was selected as a super lawyer in the field of general personal injury for plaintiffs by Law and Politics magazine, a publication written by attorneys for attorneys. This recognition resulted from thousands of ballots sent to all active attorneys in Louisiana regarding Morris Bart's professional achievements and peer recognition, as well as other deciding factors. Morris Bart was born in Knoxville, Tennessee, and grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana. He received a Bachelor of Arts from the University of New Orleans, a Juris Doctorate degree from Loyola Law School in 1978. While at Loyola, he was president of Phi Alpha Delta Legal Fraternity, a member of Blue Key National Honor Society, and received the American Jurist Award for Academic Excellence. Mr. Bart was inducted into the Louisiana Bar in 1978 and is currently a member of the Louisiana Bar Association, Louisiana Trial Lawyers Association, Mississippi Trial Lawyers Association, Florida Trial Lawyers Association, and American Trial Lawyers Association. I think you got all those associations. So let's welcome our very, very special guest today, UNO alumnus Morris Bart.
Thank you, Irvin. And let me just start off by saying that the most important thing was left off of that. And that is when you grow up in New Orleans, everybody wants to know where you went to high school. So I went to Forte. Forte High School, which, looking around here, you probably don't know about Forte, but that is now Lusher, I guess you call it upper school, right on Ferret and Nashville. But used to be called Forte, Alcee Forte High School.
What kind of
Silver and blue, tarpons.
What kind of high school was that?
Well, it's just one of your big inner city high schools. Interesting experience, and this is going to date me, but the years I was in high school were the integration years in New Orleans. And before that, everything was segregated. You had white high schools, you had black high schools. And so then, when I was in high school, the decision was made that all the schools are going to be integrated. And in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, when I was in Forte, we went through that, and we were one of the very first integrated classes of public schools in New Orleans. And it showed that experiment worked because we have our reunion every 5 years. And we go back, and our class has a huge turnout, and people from all walks of life. We're all glad to see each other. We're all good friends, and it was an experiment that obviously worked. I mean, it's pretty old-fashioned now when you think, wow, did that really happen? And it's interesting to think about. But that's what growing up in New Orleans was about, and it was really a historic time for me to go through in high school.
We had philanthropist Bill Goldring last week.
Oh, yeah, sure. I know Bill.
In our last class session.
Right.
And he talked about, what got him to decide to create, hundreds of $millions worth of a foundation to be a philanthropist, and how he grew his father's business.
Sure.
And also talked about leadership.
Right.
Why did you want to become a lawyer?
Well, it's an interesting transition. When I was at UNO, I was a pre-med major. And the reason I did that was my parents had always advocated for me to be a professional. They said, you need to be a professional. I still remember my mother saying that's something nobody can take away from you. If you have a profession, if you have a talent, if you have a skill, unlike owning a business, which can go bankrupt, if you have that skill, you can always have it. That's something nobody can take away from you. So I was a pre-med major. And then one summer, I was living in Atlanta. I was going to summer school. I was living with a friend of mine who was going to Emory in Atlanta. And I just decided to live up in Atlanta that summer because I thought it would be fun. So I went to a small school up there called Oglethorpe and took some courses.
Okay.
So I'm driving home from Oglethorpe one day, and I'm driving down a busy street in Atlanta, And this guy pulls out from this side street and smashes right into the side of my car, into the driver's door. So I'm just, young, know-nothing college student. I get out, what happened? This guy gets out, he's got a suit and tie on. And it's like, look, I'm a businessman. I'm late for an appointment I'm going to. I'm sorry about what happened. I'll give you my name and my phone number. You can take down my license number. Just get the car appraised. And then give me a call and let me know how much it is, and I'll pay you for it. So I said, okay, that's fine. Got his information, wrote down his license number, and he drives off. I take the car, I get it appraised, and then I call him a couple of days later. And he answers the phone. I say, hi, I'm Morris Bart. I'm that guy that you ran into on such and such a street. And, you hit me. I got my car appraised, and I wanted to let you know how much it is. And he says, I have no idea who you are. I said, what are you talking about? I said, just 2 days ago, you ran into my car, and you told me to get it appraised and call you. And he says, well, I don't know who you are, but don't you ever call me again. Boom, slams down the phone. And I was just blown away by that he would just so blatantly lie about that. So I tracked down, I got the license number. I had a friend who knew a policeman. We didn't have the internet back then, so we're able to track down who the owner was. But unfortunately, it was a P.O. box at a post office, because I was hoping I could get his address, and not that I was going to go over there and beat him up or anything, but I was going to confront him. I was going to go over there and knock on his door and say, why are you doing this? You ran into my car. Here's the appraisal I want you to pay. So the bottom line is I never got that paid. I couldn't track the guy down. I called him a bunch of times, and every time I called him, he just slammed down the phone and wouldn't talk to me. I even went so far, you do this when you're in college, can have time on your hands. I used to go hang out at the post office in the afternoon. I did that for a couple of days, just watching that post office box, hoping that somebody, this guy would come in to get his mail. I go, aha, here I am. And, but it wasn't meant to be. Maybe on television it would be. It wasn't meant to be. And, I was aggravated about that. And I thought, what? If this is the way things are, I got to learn how to protect myself. If stuff like this is going to be happening, I got to protect myself. And right then, you get those aha moments, the epiphany, we call it. And the advantage you all have when you're young, you act on those epiphanies. When you get older, you think about it a lot more. But that was my epiphany. And I thought, what? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to learn how to protect myself. And when I came back that summer, the first thing I did is I went to my advisor right here at UNO and said, I don't want to be in pre-med anymore. I want to go into pre-law. What should I do? And it wasn't sophisticated then. Hopefully it's more sophisticated now. But he said, okay, if you want to be in pre-law, that's fine. What are you going to major in? I said, I don't know. What do students major in that go to law school? He said, well, most of them major in political science, which I didn't even know what the hell political science was. So I said, all right, good. I'll major in political science. And that's what I did. And I majored in political science, and I did well because my mind is geared more towards reading and writing, the humanities, than it is towards the math and sciences. So my grades shot way up. I did well in political science, and I graduated. Once I switched majors, my GPA was much higher, and that got me into law school. And that's how it started.
Tell me about what it was like when you first entered the profession of being a lawyer. What was the landscape like? Now, right now, we want to say in personal injury, right? You turn on TV. Right. There's a lot of guys.
Sure.
It's a wildly...
Yeah, I started that.
So this is why I'm asking, how did that happen? And what was it like if you were a personal injury attorney? Was the field as... obviously, it didn't have as much competition, doesn't seem like. And could you make a good living in that part of the profession? Did that grow with the start of the commercials?
Sure. The hardest part about being a lawyer back then as it is now is getting the business. You just have too many lawyers chasing an ever-shrinking pie of business. And it was that way when I graduated law school. It's 1,000 times more so today. So I graduated law school. I went to work for a small business litigation firm. But my dream had always been to be on my own. I felt that that's the joy of being a professional, whether you're a lawyer, a doctor, CPA, musician, whatever your chosen field is it's truly a joy if you can be on your own and if you can have your own business. So I was a young, ambitious, competitive lawyer, and I wanted to get on my own, and it was just difficult to get cases. So right about the time I graduated, the U.S. Supreme Court, in a consumer-based decision called the Bates decision, it was Bates versus State Bar of Arizona, but it was a consumer-based decision. And what happened here is Bates was a legal aid lawyer in Phoenix, Arizona. He would be representing people in separations or divorces that fell below the federal poverty guidelines. So they could go into legal aid and they could get a lawyer for free, which is what he was doing. But he also saw that they were turning away vast numbers of people who were poor but not below the poverty guidelines, and they really couldn't afford to get a lawyer. So he came up with the idea that he would quit legal aid and he would start advertising for a legal clinic. And this legal clinic would serve a greatly underserved population of America. You know, poor people who really can't afford to get lawyers, who don't know lawyers, but yet aren't below the poverty guidelines. So he opened up this legal clinic. He started doing low-cost separations and divorces and advertising for it in the Phoenix newspaper. Well, the State Bar immediately came down on him and said, wait, we have a prohibition. Lawyers cannot advertise. We're going to discipline you. And so they filed formal disciplinary proceedings against him to disbar him. He then filed suit in federal court saying, well, I have a federal right. I have a First Amendment right, which we all know or should know, the First Amendment. That's your right to free speech. Very, very important right that we have here in America. Part of that is what they call commercial free speech, which is individuals, we have the right to say what we feel with very little limitation, but with some. But businesses have the right to free speech, to be able to say what they want to do as long as that speech is not false, deceptive, or misleading. So he challenged the State Bar in federal court. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, in a consumer-based decision, said, we're going to allow lawyers to advertise. We think it's in the best interest of the American public and consumers to know about the availability of legal services. And just like in every other business, if lawyers advertise, it drives the prices down, which is good for everyone else. Well, that decision is decided, a very historic decision as far as lawyers are concerned. And that happened around the time I was graduating. So I looked at that, and I saw that as my answer. Because I liked going to court, I liked practicing law, which I still do today, but it was hard to get the cases. So I jumped on it, started advertising, became the first lawyer in Louisiana and one of the first in the country to advertise on television. And I started that and really never looked back and stayed on television ever since, and just grew and grew and grew.
What was the response like when you started first running commercials? Tell me about the first creation of celebrity, but also what was it like? I'm really interested to know what was like in your profession.
It was really just kind of shocked. I mean, among lawyers, the lawyers didn't like it at all.
Would they address you about it?
Yeah. I remember one lawyer, and it's funny how you look back, you know, some of these comments you get when you're taking chances to be successful, which you have to take chances to be successful no matter what you do. Some of the comments really sting. And to this day, I remember one of those lawyers telling me, and it was a lawyer I really respected, a very successful lawyer back then in New Orleans, said, you better hope that this marketing succeeds because no one will ever give you a job in New Orleans again. He said, you're ruining your reputation. If it doesn't work, you got to move somewhere else. And it was interesting because, of course, nobody knew if it would work. I was the pioneer. I was the first one doing it. I didn't know if my phone was going to ring. In fact, the first time I ever ran an ad, I was over at my girlfriend's house, who's now my wife. And we watched the ad run on television. First time a lawyer ad ever ran in the whole state of Louisiana. And right after it ran, I ran to the phone and I called my answering service. And to my shock, I'd gotten one call. You know, so it's like one call, that's all. But, you know, I got that call, and so I immediately called up the guy. And I said, hey, I'm that lawyer you just saw on television. How can I help you? I couldn't believe he had actually called. That I was so inspired that, yes, it can work. You know, I got a call about it. Now it's a no-brainer. Everybody knows it works. You see billboards, television ads everywhere. But when you're the first at doing something, you just don't know. And oftentimes people you respect give you advice that they think is well-meaning. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, I'm not sure. But it's just dead wrong. It's just dead wrong. And I'm sure, you know, you can talk about that if you haven't already, that no matter what field you're in, and we know music is very competitive too, you got to take chances. If you don't take chances, you can't succeed.
How long did it take for it to catch on where it was beyond, I have a inclination that this may be successful, to I'm wildly successful now. This is really, really, really working. When did you say, okay, now I'm gonna start running some serious ads on television?
Yeah, you know, Irvin, it was gradual because money was my big limitation. You know, I didn't have money. I mean, I was just you know, I was just right out of law school. I was trying to make it. I didn't have family money or connections. And so I was having to support myself and use the money to pay for my ads. And it was slow and it was gradual. I spent whatever I could on television. I remember my agent at the time told me, listen, when I first went on television, he said, you better go to the bank, borrow money, spend everything you can, because a month from now, every lawyer and his brother is going to be on television, you know, since I'd paved the way with it. And that month stretched out to 3 years. That for 3 years, I advertised in New Orleans without one single lawyer competing with me, simply because they were unsure about it. They didn't know if it worked. And then, of course, as they saw that it was working and I was getting business, then everybody started jumping on the bandwagon.
It took them 3 years to recognize you were getting business?
It took them 3 years to do it.
It didn't take them 3 years to recognize you were getting a business, obviously.
I think it took them 3 years to get their confidence up, to take a chance to do what I had done and plunge in and actually do it. And even then, I didn't get much competition. It's still something that, to this day, there's a lot of lawyers that are embracing it. A lot of lawyers would like to do it. But what's happened is I've gotten such a head start. I mean, we're so well established, and you know, we have such a domination marketing budget in every market that we're in that a lot of lawyers just throw up their hands now and say, you know, there's no use even trying to do it.
That's amazing.
But it's a slow journey. I mean, it reminds me of another saying a friend of mine told me, that an overnight success usually takes about 10 years.
That's true.
And it doesn't happen quick. It takes a lot of hard work and, you know, sticking to your vision, sticking to your dreams, things you hear about that you think are just cliches. But when you actually live through it, it's true. You have to do that.
Do you go to court?
I do, but not as much as I used to. I mean, as my firm has gotten bigger, I've evolved from being the main trial lawyer, which for many years I was the one doing the jury trials and judge trials, and you know, I was in that front position, and that's exciting to do. I really like jury trials. You know, one of the good things about a jury trial is you have 12 people sitting there that have to listen to every word you say, and they can't stop you, they can't interrupt you, they can't ask you questions, and it's really like, if you're a frustrated actor, it's perfect, because you know, they have to sit there in rapture and listen to whatever you say, and it's your job to try and convince them you're correct. And if you're correct, then you get the verdict in your favor. As my firm got bigger and bigger and bigger, you know, I started spending more time on the business end, on the marketing and the management, which takes most of my time now. But I also head up the firm's mass tort division, which is the one that deals with like the big pharmaceutical cases, the BP oil spill, Chinese drywall, you know, when they recall medical products, the Da Vinci robot, you know, big cases like that. So I still get into court with that.
Do you find, and this may be a bit trite, but you ever walk in court and it's like, it's Mars Bart himself. Yeah. You know, does that make a difference?
Well, I get that all the time, and I love it. I like to, you got to be somewhat of a ham to do this. And I mean, just another quick story about that. When I first went on television, the very first time I went on, I told my agent, listen, I'm this young lawyer. Nobody's going to call me. We need to hire an actor. You know, somebody with gray hair that's, you know, more mature and has that lawyer look about him. And he just gave me some flip answer. He said, you know what, it's your money. Put your face on television. Don't put anybody else's. But I enjoy it. That's what's special about New Orleans. New Orleans embraces their personalities. They always have, you know, from Hap Glaudy and Tony Campo and, you know, all these old television pitchmen that have been around for a long, long time. New Orleans is a special city that way, and I like that love. I mean, they've always shown that to me. They've always embraced me. I have friends all across the country that do the same thing I do, that are the largest advertisers in every city in the country. And they're a large advertiser and they're successful, but none of them have achieved what I have as far as just, the recognition and the love that I get from the city, because they embrace their personalities. So in response to what you said, when I walk into court, yeah, everybody knows who I am, and it's a great feeling. I love talking to people. I love people. I love that attention. I love the recognition and socially dealing with people. If it makes a difference in court, I don't know. Sometimes I like to think it does, but it depends who's there. If it's somebody, a conservative Republican, it's not going to make a good impression.
You've been wildly involved in athletics.
Yes.
Why don't you give us a little bit of the background of why you got involved? When was that moment for you, and what your interest is now?
Well, it really started shortly after the Hornets came to New Orleans. And they approached me and they say, listen, you're a major advertiser. We've just relocated here from Charlotte. We'd like you to be a sponsor. And I said, all right, I'm interested in that, but what do you propose? And so they came out with their pretty much buy the sports book proposal. We'll put you up on signs. We'll put you in our little game day program. It was boring, and I've never liked that. And one thing I've been lucky about is I've had a talent for marketing, and I've done my marketing, my creativity myself. I have several people I work with that produce the ads, but I've really micromanaged all of my marketing and advertising. So I talked to him, I said, well, let me see if I can come up with something that would work. So we got back together, and I told him, I said, listen, I got a great idea. I'm an injury lawyer. What about if I do an injury report for the Hornets? And we can do that on the pregame show before the Hornets take the court. So they ran it by the NBA, and the NBA said, absolutely not. It's not fair. We don't want teams knowing what players are injured right before they take the court, because they'll adjust their lineups. So again, and this is, you got to be persistent in all this stuff. So I thought about it a little bit, and then I went back to him. I said, all right, well, what about if we do it at 6:55 on the pregame show, 5 minutes before the Hornets take the court at 7 o'clock? That way, we're not giving anything away, because they're getting ready, they're practicing, they're on the court, they're getting ready to play. It doesn't give anything away. So this time, the NBA approved it. But then they came back and they said, all right, we'll let you do it, and Bart can go on television, but he's got to sit there with the sportscaster, and the sportscaster has to be the one that gives the injury report. He can't do it. So we started off, at that time, the sportscaster was Jordy Hultberg, who is, he still does LSU sports, but he was doing the Hornets back then. So typically, we'd sit here like this, and we'd be on two stools right on the court, and Jordy would be there, and then he'd go, okay, I'm here with Morris Bart. Morris, what time is it? And I go, it's time for the Morris Bart injury report. And he'd go, great, thanks, Morris, and then he'd take it and he'd go from there. And so over time, I used to, I kept pushing a little bit to get a few more words in, a few more comments in. And so it got to the point where it was almost like a little dialogue between the two of us. Then Hurricane Katrina hits. Our team moves to Oklahoma, and it's gone for 2 years. Then they come back, and they come to me and they say, listen, we're back now. We have an offer from a hospital. I think it was Ochsner. It was either Ochsner or East Jeff. And he said they would like to do the injury report, and they're willing to pay us 5 times more to do it than you're paying us. But we want to give it to you first because you're the one that created it. And I said, well, listen, guys, I'm just glad you're back. Glad to be back in New Orleans, glad the Hornets are back. Go ahead and give it to them. I don't care. They said, all right, but we're going to do something special for you. So I said, great. About a month goes by, then they come back, and they said, okay, here's what we've come up with. We're going to give you your own segment called the 5-Game Outlook. And you're going to go on television during the pregame show. We'll give you 2 minutes live on the pregame show, which really is an eternity when you think about it. On live television, 2 minutes is very difficult, very difficult. And when you think about a 30-minute show, when you take out the commercials, it's probably about 22, 23 minutes. So 2 minutes is 10% of all the content of that show. So I told them, I said, thanks, guys. It's a great offer. It's something I've always dreamed of, but I'm not a sportscaster. And they said, don't worry, we'll give you talking points, and you can do it. And so they pitch it to the NBA, and the NBA says, absolutely not. You know, they say, we have a very strict rule that game content, which is the pregame show, the game, and the postgame show, can only be delivered by professional sportscasters. And Bart is not a professional sportscaster. He can't do it. And the Hornets really went to bat for me. They argued with the NBA. They said, look, this guy's been on television a lot. He's really well known in the community. We really want him to do it. So the NBA says, fine, he can do it, but we want you to send us tapes of what he's doing. Send us tapes of his segment, and we'll see if we approve it or not. So that's how it started. I went on, and for the first few segments, it was taped and sent to the NBA. And you talk about sweating. I mean, not only is it tough, there's a big leap from doing a 30-second commercial where you can do take after take after take, and then going live on television doing 2 minutes, particularly sportscasting, because sportscasting is so data and detail intensive.
That changes.
And everybody knows it. And here I am, a lawyer, and I know people are looking and saying, what the hell is that lawyer doing on television talking about the Hornets? If I made one mistake, that would be rammed down my throat. So I would spend hours preparing for those 2 minutes. And then when I'd finish, I mean, the entire top brow would be covered with sweat. I got to the point I had to wear a T-shirt under my shirt because not knowing it, I'd just be talking as fast as I could. And I'd just be covered with sweat, so I had to wear a T-shirt. But we did it for about 4 or 5 times, and then the NBA said, fine, you don't need to send us any more tapes. He's approved. So I became the only non-professional sportscaster in the entire U.S. that was allowed to go on television and deliver game content. And then it just, you know, my association just grew and grew with the Hornets from there. I got to know all the sportscasters, got to know all the players, got to know the owner, George Shinn, and then when he got in financial trouble, I teamed up with Gary Schwest, and we met and negotiated with David Stern to see if we could buy it. It's an interesting story. I don't know if you want me to go into that.
Absolutely love to.
Well, so what happened was George Shinn, who owned the team, he wanted to sell it. He got into financial trouble. And we were offering to buy it from him for $265 million, which I thought was a very good price. That was based on what Charlotte was sold to Michael Jordan and for $265 million, and very comparable markets. The Hornets came out of Charlotte. So to me, that was the appropriate price. That was our baseline. Well, the problem that had happened with that is that when George Shinn was going under, he was willing to sell it to us cheap, but then the NBA came in and said, wait, we can't allow you to sell the team that cheap because the values of all the teams will go into a tailspin.
Absolutely.
So they said, we've got to make the market, which is common on Wall Street if you've ever studied, you know, finance and investments. They have what they call market makers, whose job is to prop up the price of certain stocks. And in a similar fashion, that's what he did. He came in, and the NBA told George Shinn, we're going to buy the team for you for $300 million because that's what we think it should sell for. And so they did a structured deal. The NBA didn't have to give them that much money up front, but they did a structured deal for $300 million. And in the first time in history, the NBA bought the Hornets. So now the NBA owns it, and they've got it for $300 million. They own it for 2 years. Well, the experts, the NBA, while they have it for 2 years, they end up losing $38 million on the team just in day-to-day operations. So now we're 2 more years down the road, and they're in it for $338 million. So we go to David Stern, and we say, look, we want to buy it for $265. He says, no, because the NBA has $338 million in the team. We're not going to lose money on this team. Before we lose money, we're going to move it out of New Orleans, and we'll take it to either California, where we have an offer from a group there that was Larry Ellison.
Right.
He'll buy it for $350 to $375, or we'll take it up to Seattle, Washington, and we have another big internet group up there that will buy it for $350 to $375. And the NBA can make, you know, $40, $50 million on the deal. But we don't care about doing that. We'd like to keep the team in New Orleans, but we're not going to lose money. So we went up to $300 million to buy the team, and he said, no, we're not going to do it. So now it's the 11th hour, and they're really getting ready to move the team out of here. Then Tom Benson gets in his plane, flies up to New York, and meets with Stern, and says, all right, I'll do it. You know, I think it's going to be bad for New Orleans. if we lose this team. And if we lose it, I know we'll never get another NBA franchise. So I'll do it. I'll pay you your price of $338 million. And that's what he did. And really, I hate to lose, myself. I hate to lose having, bought a piece of the team. It would have been a dream. But all of us owe a debt of gratitude to him because he's not into basketball. Before he bought the team, in the 10 years the Hornets were in New Orleans, Tom Benson went to a total of 2 games.
Yeah.
And one of those 2 games was after the Saints won the Super Bowl, and he went there just to do a victory lap.
Yep.
He showed up with all the Saints players, and they had a standing ovation. And the other time he went there is when the newspaper talked about a public feud between him and George Shinn, and he went there and the 2 of them held their hands up together.
It's at that game.
That was the only 2 times he ever went to a Hornets game. And so now he's buying the team for $338 million, which is grossly overpriced. But he did it, and thank God he did it because it kept the team here. And now he's poured a ton of money into the team. He's built a first-class practice facility, and the team is here. And because of him, we have it here. And look, I still have my seats. I sit right next to him courtside. So, it's like...
And y'all are neighbors.
I got this, right, we're neighbors, so I got the same seats without having to invest millions and millions of dollars. So it worked out good. But it's a happy ending to that story because, he stepped up and kept the team in New Orleans, which I think is valuable to all of us New Orleanians.
Tell me about you and education. You're big on education.
Yeah, I'm big on education because it's like my small way of trying to do something for New Orleans. And, New Orleans is such a wonderful city. I grew up here. I love New Orleans, and just about all of us that live here really love the city. And the city is booming right now. We have so many positive things going on. We have, I couldn't even count all of it. We have 500 more restaurants now than pre-Katrina. We have this huge medical complex going up. Forbes magazine has picked us as the fastest growing city in America. You have thousands of young people pouring into the city. You have this hip new vibe about New Orleans. You have areas that have been dead are popping up. Ferret Street has come alive, which, used to be a war zone for many years. On the other hand, you have the dark cloud. In my mind, the dark cloud is crime, it's poverty, it's drugs, it's that sort of thing. So this is a very complicated problem. I don't have an answer to it. I'm a lawyer, I'm not a social worker, so I don't pretend to know what I don't know. But I do believe one of the solutions, maybe not the solution, but one of the solutions is education. I really think education is very important. I wouldn't be sitting here talking today if it wasn't for education. If I didn't go through UNO and then law school, I wouldn't be here. So I think education's important, and that's something I can do and I can wrap my arms around. I can't solve tremendous social problems. Nobody can. I haven't heard any reasonable answers from President Obama to Mayor Landrieu to, I just read in today's paper that, these churches are all joining together. I think it's all good. I think it's all good, but nobody's come up with that magic bullet to solve the problem. So I don't want to just sit back and wait and see what other people do. So I thought I can jump out and I can do something right now to help kids in school and maybe improve their life a little bit. So I have several things I've done, but the one I'm most proud of right now is called Bart's Bees, which I did with the Hornets. And we picked 5 inner city schools, and what we do is we'll go to them. And there'll be myself, a couple of Hornets players, now Pelicans, of course. I'm used to saying Hornets. The cheerleaders, the mascot, and we'll have an assembly with all the kids will be out there, hundreds of kids. And we basically tell them in the next quarter, if you get B's or better on your report card, then we will give you tickets to an upcoming Hornets game. We'll give you backpacks, T-shirts, whatever. And the kids go wild. They're really excited about it. And one of the schools, which I'm really proud of, Langston Hughes, which is right next to the fairgrounds in City Park area. The principal there told me the next quarter their honor roll went up 40%, which he attributed to the program we do. So we've been doing it for 3 or 4 years now, and we're going to do it with the Pelicans, although I don't have a name for it, Bart's Bees had good alliteration to it. We were thinking maybe Bart's Birds, I don't know. We're kind of grappling. Pelicans, it's just kind of a tough word to work with. And they, just an aside, we were wondering, well, what are they going to call the dancers? You know, they had the Honeybees, which is a great name.
So what
well, they went with the default name. They call it the Pelicans Dance Team. So what are you going to do? I think they could have done better than that. But that's what it is.
They gave up. You know?
Yeah, it's the Pelicans Dance Team. So anyway, I'm very proud of that program. We're into maybe our 4th or 5th year of doing it. The kids love it. It's motivational for them. And you just don't know. It's like throwing that pebble into the water and things ripple out. You just don't know what effect it's going to have. Maybe one of the kids there see one of these tall basketball players and say, wow, that's what I want to do when I grow up. Who knows? Maybe they see me as a lawyer and I tell them I went through public schools in New Orleans, and maybe that inspires them to be a lawyer. You just don't know. But I think it's something tangible. It's something I can do right now. And I do think that education is one of the keys to improving the quality of life for everybody in New Orleans.
We do something before we open it up
Sure.
the class to ask questions. We do a word association and a Proust questionnaire.
Oh, God. It's going to be a trouble.
So I know, if you can do 2 minutes of live sports television, you're going to be awesome at our word association and a Proust questionnaire. Right.
Okay.
So I say first thing.
So you say a word and I
say a word,
first.
you tell me what comes to your mind.
Okay.
All right, you ready? Pre-med majors.
Tough. It's tough. It's a tough path. It's a rewarding profession, but it's a tough path.
Lawyers.
Also a tough path. Again, very rewarding, but tough for a different reason. Tough in the sense that there's so many of them that it's difficult.
Hit and runs.
Hit and runs makes me upset. You know, that's just shirking all your responsibilities.
One call.
That's all.
Hornets.
Excitement.
Pelicans.
Hopefully excitement.
Saints.
New Orleans.
Cowboys.
Doesn't register.
City council.
Gotta be careful what I say here. Not as effective as they could be.
Mayor.
I like them.
Governor.
Not so sure.
President.
I like them.
What is your favorite word?
My favorite word. Positive.
What is your least favorite word?
Can't.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Challenges.
What turns you off?
Laziness.
What is your favorite curse word?
That's a tough one. Damn. I mean, I don't really curse that much, so I'll just use that one. I can't think of another one.
What sound or noise do you love?
Cheering.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Loud motorcycles.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Movie producer.
What profession would you like not to do?
Let's see. Policeman.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Good job.
All right, let's open it up. Questions for Morris Bart. Who's first today?
How do you become a super lawyer? How do you achieve that status?
You know, in any profession, they have organizations that survey the members of that profession and recognize them. And so I believe what they do is they go out, they survey different lawyers in the community. They get a list of lawyers in each different area. and then they give them the designation. Super lawyer is their word, not my word. I mean, basically, it's just something where they say, okay, you've been recognized by your peer as someone that's done well.
Next question.
This doesn't sound too interesting, but you mentioned that your firm deals with Chinese drywall.
Yeah.
One of their issues. I was just wondering what that was exactly, like what the issue is with Chinese drywall.
Yeah, it really is a pretty interesting case. So what happened was, it's after Katrina, and you have thousands of homes that need to be rebuilt, and they can't get enough drywall to build the homes. And so they go to China, and China says, hey, we can make this drywall for you, and we'll sell it to you a lot cheaper, and we can send tons of it over to the two areas that need it. New Orleans needed it desperately to rebuild after Katrina, and Florida at that time was going through a condo explosion, and they were building condos like crazy, and they needed drywall. So they sent over this drywall, and it was put into all the houses. The problem was, when you look at drywall, it's like two sheets of paper with like this gypsum in between it. And that's what they put up, and that's how they make the walls. Well, in China, which is a country that has none of the safety laws or anything, consumer protection like we have here, they just took this toxic goop and put it in between the two pieces of paper. And it could have been made, we think it was made from coal ash, because they still use coal in the factories in China, and they have all this ash that's all over the streets in China. It's disgusting. So they take this goop and they put it in there. The problem is when this drywall was delivered here to New Orleans, which is a very warm and humid environment, it caused sulfur to leach out of that drywall. So people rebuilt their homes, and all of a sudden they'd walk into their homes and they'd have tears in their eyes, or their nose would start bleeding. And then odd things like their microwave would stop working, or their silverware would get all rusty, and they couldn't figure it out. And then as hundreds and eventually thousands of people in New Orleans started calling lawyers, we saw the similarity, that there was high content of sulfur in people's homes. And it was because it was leaching out of the drywall and causing a problem. It's really a difficult situation, because people had gone to their insurance company, they had gotten money to rebuild their homes, they had rebuilt the house, and now they had the drywall. So the insurance company said, we're not paying any more money, we already paid you to build your house. And the contractor said, look, I'm not paying you any money. I mean, I put in drywall, that drywall's got to be okay. So then they turned to lawyers. We filed these suits. It's a big, what they call multi-district case pending here in New Orleans. The problem is, which most people are shocked to find out, is that China is immune to judgments from the United States. That China can deliver all of their toxic crap and dump it on our shores. And whether it's contaminated milk, or, you know, like having little girls I raise, they like these little earrings they get at Claire's, you know, which you see in all the malls. And they're made in China, and they put lead in the little earrings, or they put contaminated products in the milk. And, you know, it goes on and on and on, all the contaminated products we've gotten from China. And so the drywall was just one of those. So we sued China, and they have sovereign immunity. You know, they say, no, you know, we think it's just a money grab by greedy Americans. We're not going to pay anything. The only success we've had so far is there's a German company called Knauf that set up a factory in China, and they made a lot of the Chinese drywall that we used here in New Orleans. And we can sue this company in Germany, which is a major company, and this gets really involved in heavy legal stuff, but it's called the Hague Convention, which gives citizens of one country the right to sue citizens of another country. So that's pretty much what happened with Chinese drywall, in that if you saw in the news or heard in the paper, oh, there's been some settlements and there's been some repairs done to homes, that's all by this German company that we're holding responsible. We still have not been able to get anything from the Chinese government or Chinese companies.
Did it take a long time to figure out that it was the drywall causing the issues?
Not that long, you know, maybe a year. I mean, it's just started popping up, and the the people that lived in the houses, they kind of knew it. They said, look, my house was fine, and then we put up this drywall here, and now every time I walk in this room, you know, my ears, my eyes just start tearing up, my ears hurt me, and it's just a sad situation. There's nothing that could be done because they had it in their house. They couldn't afford to move out. They didn't want to live with it. Parents were concerned about exposing their kids to it. It's been a bad situation. It goes on to this day. I mean, there's lots of homes in New Orleans that still have Chinese drywall in it. And still you can go in and smell like that mild sulfur smell. But the people can't afford to get it out of their homes.
Next question.
How has being an attorney affected like your family life? Are you able to spend a lot of time with them, or?
Yeah, I am, and it's something that work family is a balance that we all have to work for. It's not just being a lawyer. If you're successful in any business, it's that push-pull, and it hits at the same time. I mean, usually right when you're in your 30s. And, your career is hopefully on this upward trajectory. And that's when you're striving and you're working hard and you're trying to make it. And that seems to be the time when you have families. It's just that inevitable cycle of life, and of course we have all sorts of variations. But, it just seems like in your 30s or late 20s, early 30s, you start a family and you also are trying to make it at work. And you just have to juggle it the best you can. I think I did pretty good with it. I really do. I don't look back with any regrets because if my kids had something at school, I just left. I just left the office and I went there and I was there for them. Maybe I worked that night. Maybe I worked on the weekend. You do what you can. You do what you can. And I think for everybody, work family is just a difficult balance that you have to strive to put together. But as a segue, let me tell you, I'll give you what I consider my formula for success, my formula for life, for better or worse. But this is what I believe. I believe you got to have three things in life for success. You got to have health, love, and money. And those three things. And if you don't, I think any human being will strive to get that. Health first and foremost. When you're young, you don't worry about it that much. I didn't worry about it when I'm young. Health is kind of automatic. As you get older, you worry about it. But really, nothing is more important than your health. You got to take care of your health. Number two is love. You got to have love in your life. I mean, that's what makes life worth living. And I think that's important. And then thirdly, and notice I put that third is money. Money is relative. You don't have to have a lot of money. You have enough money. I think you have enough money to have freedom from worrying about bills. Once you hit that point, then you're okay. Now, some people might strive for more. I had that fire in the belly. I wanted a lot more, and I strive for that. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, I know a lot of people that I consider very successful that work for organizations. I'm very active in United Way, and they have some fabulous people that work for United Way and are very fulfilled by what they do. And they truly have success in life. But you do need to, since we're living in a capitalistic society, you do have to have some basic amount of money to take care of your bills. And so that's what I've always strived for, is to have those three things. And so I kept that in mind, while I was working and while I had a family. It's like, okay, I want to be successful, I want to make money, but hey, I still want to have love in my life, I still want to be an active father, still want to be involved with my kids, and that's very important too. And then you just juggle that the best you can.
I got a good hit and run question for you.
Okay.
Not to expose any person who is here right now, but let's say you were recently hit by a vehicle.
Okay.
And it's a public vehicle, but they left before you got the license plate. What are the options? But you're on a bike.
Oh, and you're on a bike. Well, it brings up two issues.
Bicycle.
Yeah, bicycles are very dangerous. Well, to immediately answer the question, you have to prove in court, you have to prove things. and you prove things by evidence or witnesses. It's very easy. So you have to have evidence, meaning you whip out your cell phone camera and you take a picture of the bus, or you get witnesses in the area that can come to court and say, yes, I was there and I saw that bus hit that bike and here's what happened. If you don't have witnesses, if you don't have any sort of documentary proof, you can't prove your case. And you just can't do it. Having said that, let's talk about bicycles a second. There's this big proliferation of riding bikes in the city. That's the new hip thing to do. Everybody's riding bikes. You've got to realize a couple of things. Number one, I think bike riders are very reckless. And I'm a bike rider. I mean, I love riding my bike. But you got to assume some responsibility here. Just because the Department of Streets goes out and paints some little white line on the street does not mean you're safe. Yeah, there's a lot of reckless drivers in New Orleans. We have a lot of drinking and driving, lots and lots of problems. And I see so many bikers that are going the wrong way in traffic. No one wears a helmet anymore. I don't know what happened with that. When I grew up, everybody had to wear a helmet. Nobody's wearing helmets. I see, I drive down St. Charles Avenue all the time.
But you don't have to wear a helmet. Helmets are
well,
not for bicycles, right?
No, motorcycles have to wear them. But I'm not talking about whether the law requires. I'm talking about living.
I got you.
When you fall off a bike, you can get hurt bad, which I know from personal experience because years ago I was training for a triathlon, and I was biking right out here. And they have, what's that circle? That's
right here by the university.
Yeah,
right by the lake.
Yeah, right by the lake, where Pontchartrain Beach used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm drafting, which is where you ride right very close behind the back wheel of the person in front of you. So I'm drafting behind this friend of mine. We're zooming along about 30 miles an hour, really hitting it. All of a sudden, he swerves. Right there's a pothole. I hit it. It slams me right into the street. Fortunately, I had a helmet on. Otherwise, I'd be dead. But I was severely injured, and they called the ambulance, and they took me to the hospital, and I spent a couple of weeks in the hospital. And I healed up with no residuals and no problems. Everything's fine. I was very lucky about that. But I would be dead if I didn't have my helmet on. So that's why I'm a big advocate of wearing helmets. But what I see now is, and it's a given, that cars are reckless and drivers don't respect cyclists. I just assume that, and that's New Orleans. But the bikers, you have to take a little responsibility here. For you to ride a bike at night with dark clothes and no reflectors on your bike the wrong way in traffic without a helmet on, that's asking for danger. And I got to tell you, every single day now, we get calls in my office from bikers who have been injured. I mean, it's just grown unbelievable. Every single day, somebody calls me, some biker that somebody opened a door on them, somebody did a right turn in front of them, somebody drove too close to them and knocked them off the road. I mean, just on and on and on, and they really get badly hurt. So if there's anything you take away today, and I'm sure all of you ride bikes and love riding your bikes. I like riding bikes, although I never ride my bike on the street. Just remember that New Orleans drivers are reckless, and they drink a lot. And so if you're going to ride your bike on the street, put on reflectors. I would recommend you wear a helmet, but put on reflectors, wear bright clothing, follow the laws, ride with traffic. You got to do things like that, otherwise you're going to get hurt.
Let me add one more thing to the hit and run.
Yeah.
Let's say it was a tow truck.
A tow truck that
hit the cyclist.
It's the same thing. You got to have witnesses.
Got any witnesses? No
Oh,
witnesses?
it was you, huh? Okay, well, fortunately, you're still sitting here. So, you get some road rash or whatever else. It's not a fun experience, but you didn't wind up in the hospital like I did. So you've got to be thankful for that. But, it's a lesson you got to learn, and you got to be very careful. I mean, we do have a lot of reckless drivers here. If we didn't, I wouldn't have been as successful as I am.
Okay.
So just be very careful out there on your bike.
All right, so I'm going to open it up for anybody. Last question for Morris Bart.
For young professionals or people that are just graduating college or anything, what is the best advice you give to them?
Well, I think first and foremost, you should do what you enjoy. And that's sometimes a very difficult journey to figure out what it is you enjoy. You know, my daughters, I have 3 daughters, and one of them went into teaching, which she's very happy with, and 2 of them went into social work, which they're very happy with. And, you know, I told them, look, if you want to be a lawyer, that's great, but it's not for everybody. And they took my advice, and they didn't go into law. But that's okay. You gotta figure out what you enjoy. That's difficult. That's difficult to do. And one tip I can give you in that regard is if you think there's something you would enjoy, then somehow experience that. Learn at somebody else's expense. Don't just say, hey, I want to be a teacher. Try it first. Maybe you can substitute teach. Maybe you can befriend some teachers and hang out with them, go to lunch, go to dinner with them, and see what they think about it. Don't just go into it blind. If there's something you think you would enjoy, then do your research, talk to people, and get a little advice on it first, maybe even some practical experience to see if you would like. So that's number 1, do what you enjoy. And number 2, be ready to work hard. Nothing comes easy in life. You have to have a good work ethic. Everything you can think of is very, very competitive. Your generation is coming out at a time where anything you can think of is already glutted. There's nothing you can think of doing that there's not already thousands of people in it trying to make a living. So, you know, it's very competitive. So you got to be willing to work hard. And then I guess I'd add one other element to that. I'd say number 3, you got to be willing to take chances. And I mean legal chances. That doesn't mean, you know, not paying your taxes or cheating people and stuff like that. It means, you know, taking some chances with what you do. But it starts with doing what you enjoy.
All right, let's thank our guest, Morris Bart.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, man.
All right, Irvin. Enjoyed it, yeah.
I appreciate
Very
it,
nice.
man. My pleasure.